Next up in our ACC preview is the Clemson Tigers. And they started the season, Dalton, number 9 in the AP poll, but then had a disastrous start to the season. They lost their four of their first 8 games, First time since 2011 they lost four times in an entire season. I can't even talk today, Dalton, because that's how bad Clemson was to start the year. But first time since 2011, they lost 4 times in an entire season. They lost 4 of their first 8 games. But after that, Dabo Swinney hosted a radio show. Tyler from Spartanburg called in, and they went from a 4-4 start to a 9-4 finish because they won all 5 of those games. So they could thank Tyler from Spartanburg for really lighting a fire under Dabo Swinney and lighting a fire under that Clemson team as well. Since then, man, they really have an elite defense. They have experienced players all over that depth chart and really up-and-coming stars all over that defensive depth chart as well. But it's a significant improvement in that passing game. And if they don't improve, man, there will be serious questions over whether or not Dabo Swinney, a 2-time national championship winning head coach, can be a head coach in the current age of college football when you need to be utilizing NIL and utilizing transfer portal. And, he's spoken out against both of them many times. So there's going to be a lot of questions about Clemson if they can't, rebound and still be one of the top ACC contenders. So it'll be interesting to see what they do next year. But Dalton, they should still have an absolutely loaded defense next year.
For sure. That's one thing we'll never question is the fact that Clemson's going to walk into the year with a top 10 defense. And you got stars, man. You got guys like Peter Woods up front, Barrett Carter at linebacker, RJ Mickens on the back end. They're just constantly every year loaded with a defense that gives them such a high floor. And really, that defense was the main reason they still won 9 games last year, even though it felt like everything was a disaster, right? They're going to constantly be in games, even if they're working through offensive struggles, because this will be a top 10 defense like it is every single year.
Yeah, and really the only reason why they weren't a playoff contender last year was their passing game. Cade Klubnik was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, the number 1 quarterback in the country coming out of high school. Did not live up to the hype as a sophomore, man. He had the 102nd best passing grade of the country at a 63.9. Clemson was also 90th in receiving grade as well. And they just lost their number 2 receiver in Bo Collins to Notre Dame this offseason. So, since Dabo Swinney refuses to bring in any transfers at all, there's a lot of questions about, what this unit needs to do to make serious progress. And I like some of their players they have on that roster, and I think some of those guys could end up being really good players down the road for them. But it's going to be interesting to see what they could do next year. Like one guy like Tyler Brown, the true sophomore receiver, I'm really excited about him. But other than that, man, they need Cade Klubnik and Garrett Riley to really mesh together and get a lot better in that passing game. So tell me more about Cade Klubnik, Dalton, and really what went wrong for him in his first year as Clemson starting quarterback with so much hype.
Look, there are moments where he looks good, especially in the intermediate range. He can make some really nice throws up the seams in behind linebackers. He was one of those only 4 quarterbacks with more intermediate big-time throws than him. But what really happens with Klubnik is just he needs to get better with ball security, right? Too many turnover-worthy plays, even though I think interceptions, he didn't have a high total, but his 8 dropped interceptions were the second most in the Power 5. 19 turnover-worthy plays, 13 fumbles last season, just too many moments where the ball was put in danger, right? And you just cannot, I don't care how good your defense is, how good your roster is, how good your coaching is, anything like that. If you're turning the football over, you won't win ball games, or not as many as you want to, right? And you talk about an elite defense, a really, 2 really good backs last season, NFL offensive linemen, all this stuff, but the turnover battle or even the potential turnover battle, even if let's say you get strip sack and you still recover, right? That's still a play that kills a drive, right? There's too many drive-killing plays and too many times where the football is put in danger by Klubnik. If he doesn't fix his ball security, he's going to have real issues this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing he does have in front of him, at least, is a really, really good offensive tackle protecting him in Blake Miller, who's really, even though he's only a rising junior, Dalton, he's one of the most experienced tackles that we have in college football. He's been Clemson's starting right tackle in each of the last 2 years, and his 1,952 snaps over the last 2 years are the second most of any offensive tackle in the country. As a true freshman, he led all true freshman tackles with a 76.8 run blocking grade in 2022, 71.4 run blocking grade this past season, led all ACC tackles, and among returning Power 5 tackles, he's the 4th most valuable over the last 2 years, according to our wins above average metrics. So he's a really good player, man. And actually, Dalton, a lot of people think, it's a 2-horse race between Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks Jr. for OT1 in the 2025 NFL draft. our lead draft analyst, Trevor Sikkema, has Blake Miller as the number 2 tackle in the draft in his preseason ranking right now. I believe right behind Will Campbell, I believe is his number 1 player. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I tend to side with the consensus and say it's a pretty clear top 2 of Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks Jr., but Trevor's obviously one of the best in the business, man. He loved Blake Miller's tape when he was watching him. So he's definitely a name to know for next year's draft and definitely a name to know as one of the best tackles that we have in college football.
Absolutely, and it's great that Miller's got so much experience, but I'll tell you what, Clemson's got a guy in the defensive line who apparently didn't need any to start dominating, and that's Peter Woods last year, man. 6th best overall grade of any defensive tackle in the country, 7th best run defense grade. I'll tell you right now, as a true freshman, he did not look like one. He is strong as all hell, Max, and he's as good as any run defender at any position in the country, and put up a top 30 pass rush grade. And just for the context of it, what he did as a true freshman, at least from a grading perspective last year, is on par with guys like Dexter Lawrence and Ed Oliver, right? You're getting into legendary names, at least when it comes to the college game, and Dexter Lawrence is one of the best D tackles in the NFL. Ed Oliver makes over $15 million a year. He's a really good player. Peter Woods in the 2026 class has all the potential of being a first-round pick. Played just over 300 snaps last year. You'd like to see him get a little more full-time work, but Clemson's so deep, they're always rotating guys. But Peter Woods is the anchor of their front 7 already heading into his true sophomore season.
Absolutely, man. The fact that he was so good, even though he was basically the 3rd D tackle in the rotation after Tyler Davis and Rick Ororo, just shows how good he is, man. And former 5-star recruit, and he lived up to it immediately as a true freshman. I'm so excited to see what he could do for an encore as a sophomore, right? So give me the bottom line time now, Dawn. What do you think is the ceiling for this Clemson team? What are you expecting out of them right now? And do you think this is one of the college football playoff teams that we'll have at the end of the year?
The ceiling is an ACC title, as it generally is with Clemson. When people ask me, who do you think is going to win the ACC, my gut wants to say Clemson. But it's Cade Klubnik is such a huge question mark for me, right? It's just hard when you have a guy, let's just say on our scale, grading between a 60 and 65 as your quarterback. Like, I need that guy to make an improvement, right? If he did make a significant jump, if the ball security got better, there is a chance I could pick Clemson, right? I think, to me, between Clemson and Miami, these are the 2 teams I'm stuck on at the very, very top, because Clemson's defense is so good, and they're still really well coached. People can say what they want about Dabo with the portal and NIL, but on the field, he's still a spectacular football coach, right? They won 9 games last year, and everything felt like a disaster. If they get any better and Klubnik gets any better, I think an ACC title is absolutely within reach, but the quarterback is the biggest thing holding me back from feeling really, really good about that.
So are you picking them to win the ACC right now? Have you decided yet or no?
I haven't. I think this might be the hardest conference to decide for me. I really, it's really, really tough, just because my gut wants to pick Clemson, and I know Miami has a boatload of talent, but Miami also has a huge advantage at quarterback, right? And we'll get into that in their preview, but Klubnik, it's maybe the biggest question mark in the entire conference, is if he can make a significant improvement this season.
Yeah. All right, I'm with that too. And I'm not picking Clemson to win the ACC this year, but their defense, man, is certainly good enough to keep them in contention for the ACC and a playoff spot. But like I said, man, it really is Cade Klubnik. It's on him now as a junior to show whether or not he could be the guy he was coming out of high school, where everyone thought, oh, this is the next guy, after Trevor Lawrence, after Deshaun Watson, this is the next superstar quarterback. Hasn't shown that so far for Clemson. Now we'll see what he could do as a junior with Garrett Riley, who, going into the year, everyone thought was the best offensive coordinator in college football. And obviously that didn't really look great last year, but there's a lot on both those guys heading into next year. And you look at their schedule, I mean, they open up with Georgia to start the season. That's not an easy first game for Cade Klubnik to do in his junior year. But, they after that, they play NC State, they play Florida State at Florida State, they play Louisville, they play Virginia Tech. It's a relatively difficult schedule that Clemson has next year, one of the 40 hardest in the country according to our power rankings. So I think they're certainly a playoff contender. I'm not picking them to win the ACC, though, next year. But I think they are a really, really good team, and probably more like a top 15, top 20 team that we have in college football. That's what we got for our preview of the Clemson Tigers. Hey, thanks for watching the PFF College Football Show. Before I let you go, though, we have an unbelievable deal for you guys right now. If you use the code CFB25, you get 25% off your PFF Plus annual subscription. We've got the 2024 College Football Preview Guide that you can find over at pff.com, featuring the best players in the country from all 70 Power 5 teams, plus 10 Group of 5 teams that have the best chance at making the college football playoff as well. You can also gain access to NCAA premium stats for historical games, teams, and player tracking dating all the way back to 2014, so the last decade or so of college football. All the stats you can hope for, you can find in PFF Premium as well. Also, you can be the GM of your favorite NFL team with our unbelievable mock draft simulator where you can draft up to 7 rounds of players for your NFL team. And if you want to dominate your fantasy league, you can do that as well using the best fantasy tools on the planet. All of that and more with your PFF Plus annual subscription, which you can find for 25% off right now with the code you can find in the description. Or if you want to go to subscribe.pff.com and use the code CFB25 at checkout, again, you get 25% off your PFF Plus subscription. This won't last forever, so make sure you take advantage of it right now.